Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Not Your Grandfather's Capture System, a look at the latest advances in capture technology. My name is Teresa Resick. I'm the Director in the Market Intelligence Group here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are Rich Medina of Doculabs and Anatola He of Hyperscience. Hyperscience is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a few pointers for viewing today's webinar. By joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience, so feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. And across the bottom of the screen is a list of all of the widgets that we have available for you today. And group chat is available to you, and you do need to open that, and you do that by clicking the group chat icon that is in that grouping across the bottom. With group chat, you'll also be able to text chat with each other and also with a few of us from here at AIIM. Do ask questions of the speakers throughout the hour using the Q&A feature, and we will hold them until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. You may also use this feature to ask for technical assistance. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list that's to the right of the slide area. And there are also a few other documents and links in there that just be helpful for you and learn more about today's topic. So just click in there at any time, and that resource will open in a new browser tab, and you can save and read it after the webinar. At the end of this webinar, a brief survey will open in your browser, and it's also in the widgets below in the slide area. And I'd greatly appreciate it if you take a few moments to offer your feedback and suggest other topics for us to cover. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. Now to introduce today's speakers, Richard Medina is co-founder and a principal consultant at Doculabs. He has consulted for organizations in a wide range of industries, including financial services, insurance, communications, utilities, and government. Doculabs was founded on 3 simple principles: objective recommendations, analysis grounded by benchmark data, and a specialization in content-based applications. Doculabs has established itself as a premier consultancy in the information management and information governance market, engaged by most of the Fortune 100 over its 22-year history. And we also have with us Anatola He, and she is Vice President of Business Development at Hyperscience. And Hyperscience is an AI company in New York City focused on using machine learning to automate and simplify office work. Anna is responsible for developing and implementing new ideas to grow the company and expand its business. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Rich Medina to begin our talk today. Rich?
Thank you, Teresa. And just before I get rolling, can you hear me okay, Teresa?
Yes, I can. Sound great, Rich.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And, sorry, there we go. In this webinar, we're going to address such questions as, is my capture system really holding me back? What are the latest trends and technologies I'm missing out on? And which ones are worth investing my time and resources in? So as you've no doubt noticed, information management has been taking some big jumps in innovation in the last few years with robots, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other developments. And while this is exciting, we're also seeing that some of this stuff isn't production ready yet. It isn't civilized. And secondly, that many organizations aren't yet ready to assimilate it yet. Or rather, they need some help in determining what's real, what's not just real, but also production ready, can be put into production, slid into your existing environment, and what's worth implementing. That is, it not only does work in your existing environments, but is worth the money that you're paying for it, and that isn't just a sink for additional labor. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. Most of you are familiar with the history of enterprise content management. As you know, it began primarily as a way to digitize paper documents, often after all the useful work had been done with them. So the goal you'd often hear was, paper-free by 93 or 2003 and so on. And then workflow and pre-process ingestion introduced the ability to use content to complete a task rather than simply store it post-processes before. And this has been going along pretty well, but complete digital transformation requires a reimagination of the entire process, often extracting data from content at the beginning of a process, or only creating a document at the conclusion of a process, an artifact when you need it. The question is, how are we doing so far in the digital transformation effort? And if the goal is to become digital and automated where possible, with an excellent participant experience, the task requires that we convert paper efficiently wherever we still must deal with paper, and we be rigorous about the mantra, born digital, stay digital. That is, whenever anything is born digital, it isn't converted to paper first and then back to digital. Now, we've only had partial success so far because first, some of the technologies at least don't solve the problem. They just don't work. So traditionally, handprint recognition did not work. And traditionally, if any of you go back to 1998 or 2002, automatic classification never really worked out well. Content federation never really worked out well. Enterprise search never really worked out so well, and so on. There's a whole host of technologies that never really could do the job they were tasked with. Or the second issue is that they solve the problem, but it's just not worth it. So in many cases, optical character recognition that requires too much hand keying or too much QA or too much exception handling isn't worth doing, even though technically you can do it, but it doesn't reach the threshold of adequacy that you need. And then there are other mostly non-technical roadblocks in play, the soft things like corporate culture that doesn't want to move to electronic signatures, for example. So in this talk, we'll focus mostly on the technical trends and technologies, but I would just want to wave my hands at the other roadblocks first. And I won't really spend time on these. They're worth a presentation themselves, but we often find all 5 of them in organizations. I'm just going to look at 3. Regarding the first one, demographics, some demographics prefer paper and face-to-face encounters and e-signatures that look like signatures. So even what some of our clients have found is that even with their the customer base is comfortable with moving to e-signatures, they don't want a biometric approach. They want something that really looks like an ink signature. So all of those have to be addressed. And the solution is either changing their minds or offering all channels and ways to interact. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Regarding number 4, doing anything useful with digital automation requires a good information architecture. That is, if you're dealing with electronic forms, you have to chop up the forms into fragments, which requires really good classification, a good taxonomy. If you're dealing with multiple channels of information coming in, paper, fax, electronic, and so on, you've got to have a good way to tag those documents and get them routed in the right way. This can seem daunting, but there are ways to do it, to have an enterprise taxonomy that can get the information in the right place and the right time and so on. And then regarding number 5, some organizations are hesitant for compliance reasons about getting rid of paper or going to devices, mobile, or using e-signatures. But as I said, I'm not going to be really talking about those. I want to talk about the technologies. And if you do capture well, if you do ingestion well, there's a really good, well-trodden business case for it. I know this is an eye chart, but take a look at it. So here, what we have here are some costs from years of benchmarking in-house versus outsourced BPO operations. And we break the capture into services like sort and prep and scanning and data entry and exception handling, research, automated recognition, and so on. Then we break it into tiers. By tiers, I just mean levels of complexity or bands of effort and so on, so that you folks can provide the appropriate resources, price it appropriately, and so on. And then the next columns show an example in-house operation, like perhaps your own, and then the industry as a whole, what we see across a number of large capture operations, and then for-profits and in-house operations for each. And you might compare yourselves with these costs. Now, the point here is to note automation at the bottom. Automation is cheap because it's very low labor costs. It still has some because even if you're doing automated recognition and trying to do straight-through processing, there's still some QC, some error detection and correction, but it's great. So one of the most important self-measurements you can conduct is determining how much and which document types and processes are amenable to recognition. Now, versus crazy handprint or, for example, letters, correspondence. I just said handprint. And handprint has been almost completely resistant to cost-effective recognition. But what if you could recognize it as well as machine print? Hold that thought. We're going to be talking about that in a bit. Now I've got another graphic to show you. And this is what many of you folks look like. That is, you probably have a capture environment that looks like this. So your capture operation is taking in documents and data from multiple locations and multiple technology channels. You're pulling it in from paper, from multifunction devices, from email, fax, smartphones, portal upload, and so on. And many operations have literally been doing this since the late 1990s. And with many of them, it's a mess. You got no unified approach. The design is not hub and spoke, but rather it looks like this spider web with no consolidation of platforms. It's a whole hodgepodge of different vendors and products and so on. And that's not the only problem, because there's also exception handling. That, as I said, that capture is only the stuff going downstream, as it were. But there's also exception handling, which often comes upstream, which is equally messy. And the exception handling suffers from the same disorganization, but it's almost always too late and too damaging and too expensive. Often mistakes don't get addressed until they are far downstream, meaning lost time and unhappy customers and inefficiency. So that's a key problem to solve. How do you solve for the inefficiency of multiple channels and work streams and services? Either when they're paper or when they're electronic, as you're trying to move to digital channels. And there are 11 key capture trends which can help you do that. So let's talk about some of the capture trends that are production ready. Now, the first 4 here are general design approaches or principles that should guide everything that you do. Now, the first one is a bit of jargon that I hate. Omnichannel ingestion design. As I said, we collectively, the industry, have been doing multi-channel since the 1990s. In fact, one of the first meetings I had when I joined DocuLabs was with a vendor in 1995 who was talking about how they had nailed multi-channel. But there are 2 more rigorous demands in 2018 that you should be meeting. Just being multi-channel isn't enough. Number 1, it's not that you can do all channels, it's that you can all do them well, that is seamlessly, that is they're all first-class citizens where possible with minimum exception handlings. And you should be able to push the good channels while demoting the bad ones. So you should be demoting paper and fax and promoting portal upload and so on. And the second demand is that you can move between channels within processes. So think about in banking, say wealth management, where you might have multiple generations. You might be dealing with a family in wealth management if you're a bank. And you should be able to move between all various channels. If I'm if I'm applying for a mortgage, I might start it with an agent in person, then I go home and do some stuff online, then I send in a fax, and I mail in some documents, and so on. I should be able to switch from channel to channel in a single process without messing everything up. That's the requirement for omnichannel ingestion design. The second one is multi-platform and user experience design. That is, you should be able to provide customers with a great experience on any devices they use. So on mobile devices, using electronic forms should be as satisfying as in person and so on. Round-trip communication design is the next one. So many of your communications, such as forms, go to a customer, and the customer does something with it, like fill out information, then it comes back to you. So you should be designing for that entire round-trip process. So if you have to send and receive paper, for example, before it goes out to the customer, you extract the data that's going out to them and maybe barcode it on the document so that when the paper comes back filled out by the person, if it has to be paper, all you're doing is recognizing the barcode and marrying up the information that went out on that person's account with the actual document and so on. Much easier. And then the last one here is born digital, stay digital. I keep saying that. So keep it data unless and until it has to become a document, and keep it digital. Never make it go into paper unless you have to. So there are additional trends right here. The next one is case management and I'm sorry, the next one. Sorry about that, folks. The next one is vetting and NIGO processing, not in good order processing. And the idea here is the exception handling mess that I talked about, that mare's nest, is particularly about the inability to detect complete and correct inbound sets of documents as early as possible. So what you do is you should vet or validate inbound material at the package or document set level, not just at the field or page or document level. This is now possible using capture technologies that can incorporate case management rather than leaving it to move downstream and use more expensive people and tools. The next one is RPA or robots. And this is a whole presentation in itself, but you can use them judiciously and they can succeed. In a nutshell, I'd say you have two rules of thumb when you're talking about ingestion. The first is that focus on assisting people in their tasks as they're working with the ingested documents, like document vetting for NIGO processing, rather than trying to replace employees. And secondly, don't reinvent the wheels. You go with a vendor for RPA and a set of products who knows capture and digitization rather than one that just comes out of the robot space and is trying to address this new problem. The next is case management and BPM, which I addressed. The one after that is e-forms and e-signatures. And those two are the ones that can most take advantage of the first four design principles that I talked about: round-trip design, user experience, omni-channel, and so on. And then finally, I get to number 10, which is comprehensive intelligent recognition. And a huge trend today is the ability to do comprehensive intelligent recognition, ranging from barcodes to machine print to constrained handprint in those little boxes to human script. And we'll be talking about in just a moment. And then the kind of, that's for recognizing paper and digitized images, but we're going to be moving into completely digital environments and so on. So the kind of recognition and technology and classification technology relevant to comprehensive intelligent recognition is also relevant to digital files. If you get a bucket of files ingested that you have to sort through and process and so on. So I'm going to treat both of these kind of together. And historically, going back to the 1980s, recognition was based on pixel density on a character-by-character basis. Today, with machine learning, it's based on linguistics and context. And the combination of them both is proving effective in many contexts. Now, we at Doculabs have been benchmarking capture and OCR technology literally since the early 1990s. University of Nevada, Las Vegas was also doing that as well. And so we've been very skeptical about the ability for technologies to not just to do it, but to do it well and to be cost effective. And so we have these four criteria for an acceptable capture solution, particularly one that automates recognition. First, it has to have enough depth. That is, it has to work well enough to adequately reduce or eliminate human intervention. So there's not enough exception handling, QA, and so on. Most OCR and handprint technologies are not able to do that. Secondly, it must either have enough functional breadth to be standalone, or secondly, fit easily into a larger environment that provides the functional depth. In English, what that means is it's got to be able to do the breadth of characters that you need identified. It can't just be, pardon the expression, an idiot savant who can just do script. It has to be able to do machine print and script and so on. Or it has to fit in like a little doodad into a larger environment that can provide the other recognition capabilities. Third, it has to fit into the larger process environment beyond the recognition stages. That is, it has to be able to, it has to fit into the upstream, accept efficiently the captured images that are being handed to it, and it has to hand over efficiently the data that it has extracted and not require custom coding and so on. And then finally, is going to be human intervention. That is, there's going to be training the system, and there's going to be QA, error correction, and so on. And so it has to provide an adequate user experience for those humans who are assisting the automation. We've recently evaluated some solutions, and a few fulfill the 4 criteria much more favorably than we expected. And one of them is on the webinar today. And so they'll be talking about their product. But I want to talk about 2 more cases, and 100%. We were very skeptical going into it, and we were very favorably impressed on those 4 criteria. So what we're seeing with this case study right here, this is really a fictional case study, but it's a 3-year roadmap. The target future state for many of our clients in financial services, who right now are moving through the phases beginning to combine comprehensive recognition with an electronic form strategy that incorporates e-signatures with case management that does NIGO processing in the capture center rather than downstream and so on. So that's what we're seeing, and we're seeing that as a 3-5-year outlook. That's very realistic if you do it with a good roadmap. And secondly, the second kind of case study we have are the emerging startups and so on who are disruptors. And they have not spent the last 30 years using ECM technology and so on. They've jumped wholeheartedly into the digital-first approach. And so they've incorporated those 4 design principles I talked about from the get-go. And all the labels, as it were, the logos, as it were, that you see here are very much worth watching as you folks develop your roadmap. Most of you have to move from the paper-based, document-based approach into the new digital world. And so that's it for me. I'm going to hand the presentation over to Anna. Anna?
Hi, Rich. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So thank you so much, Rich. Thank you, Teresa. Both DocuLabs and AIIM have been fantastic to work with, and we appreciate the assessment. I'm going to use my time to try to make the things that Rich discussed a little more tangible in the context of the work that we have done. And I will give some background on what we do as a company, provide an overview of the products that we've built, and then I'll spend some time to share a few stories on how we've helped customers get a step closer to this true transformation that Rich has been talking about. So starting with some background on us as a company. HyperScience is founded to deliver the benefits of machine learning to large enterprises and government institutions. Our customers are organizations that are not the 3 or 4 truly machine learning-centric companies in the Global 2000, but they could all greatly benefit from the technology's power to automate massively complex and mission-critical processes. HyperScience is really about using the exciting advances in machine learning to automate various types of office work for these types of organizations. We're starting with a very small sliver of that, and we're focusing our efforts on solving the problems that arise around paperwork processing. For clarification, I'm referring to both physical paper and electronic documents that come in PDF or JPEG or TIFF formats. But whatever the format, the data on the document can be printed or handwritten or hand-printed or some combination of all these things. And that is a big reason why manual data entry is alive and well due to some of the limitations of the existing technology that Rich covered earlier. Manual data entry is obviously a costly operational headache that's not core to most companies' businesses, and a problem that our products, that I will share in a bit, are particularly suited to solve. This is a wordy slide, but as Rich discussed, the ECM journey has been rocky, and we understand why folks like DocuLabs came to be skeptical of quote-unquote solutions that resulted in incomplete transformation and incomplete automation. The cost associated with each manual touchpoint is high and driven up further by inevitable human error. It's no wonder that reducing operating costs and errors has a powerful bottom line effect, even when compared to increasing sales. We think that true transformation solutions that meet the criteria discussed earlier provides more benefits than just reducing costs or improving profitability. Other benefits that we see with our customers include improved throughput and turnaround time to customers, more engaged employees working on more strategic and differentiated work, and the ability to invest in growth opportunities rather than maintaining legacy manual processes. All right, with this in mind, the first products that we've developed are designed as drop-in replacements for manual data entry processes. As the name implies, our Forms product automates data capture on forms with consistent, predictable structures. So these are your new account opening forms, change of beneficiary forms, mortgage application forms, first notice of loss, standard accord forms, etc. Our other product, Flex, is currently live in beta, and it's designed for capturing data from somewhat structured documents that do not have predictable layouts. These are documents like invoices, pay stubs, and bank statements, where you generally know what types of data you want off of each document type, but no two are going to be alike. With Flex, you can tell the machine what kind of data you need, and it captures it regardless of where it is on the particular page or whether it has seen that specific document or format before. All right, now I'll say a few words on how our products do what I'm describing. The first thing that happens is that the machine recognizes the incoming document from an image. With a combination of natural language processing and image recognition, the machine is able to do this even if the incoming image is extremely distorted or low quality. This obviously happens more and more as most people don't clean their scanners for years, don't have fax machines anymore, and are just sending in low-res pictures of their documents. Once the image is cleaned up, the machine is able to visually recognize the document in the image by either mapping it to a document library or drawing on its understanding of what specific document types look like. Automating this document classification piece really reduces the need for manual sorting touch points that exist in the workflows that Rich was describing before you even get to the data capture piece. Now that the machine understands what type of document it's looking at, it's ready to use the comprehensive intelligent recognition technology to transcribe the contents of the document. We have developed this technology completely in-house, and it's able to capture both printed and handwritten content, even when the image quality conditions are not pristine. However, there are times you'll get truly atrocious handwriting samples or someone spills coffee on the document, and for that we have built in our supervision platform that serves to handle exceptions, perform QA on the entire system and workflow, and make incremental improvements to transcription performance over time. All right. The last two things I want to cover are two case studies, so just real stories from customers on the impact that our products have had on their operations and their business. The first one that I'm talking about is a global financial services company who reached out to us to achieve faster processing time for processing their customer forms. So they had a series of hundreds of different types of account opening forms and account maintenance forms, any kind of hardship forms, and they were coming in at about 2 million pieces of mail a year. Each piece of mail had a combination of letters and forms that go through an intensive sorting and scanning and resorting and review process before the documents actually get to a 400-person team to manually enter the data on these documents into the relevant systems. Once we've deployed our technology, the team was able to process the incoming paperwork with fewer manual touch points, and this includes the sorting that I mentioned earlier. So it's not just the transcription. There are a lot of reasons why sorting is a highly manual process as well. And so with that feature in our product, we're able to not only reduce the manual touch points assorted with document classification, but also increase the accuracy for that step as well. With the data extraction and throughout the entire process, we were able to maintain their 98% and above accuracy SLA. And so with the increase in throughput, we're seeing improving customer response times and resulting customer satisfaction. All right, the next story I want to tell is about one of our brokerage clients that needed to process a variety of archival fund performance documents. They inherited about 3 million documents that they needed to quickly migrate into their central system of record. And to do so, they hired a temp team of about 60 data keyers to do this within 12 months. They discovered our Forms Capture product early on in this project and decided to bring us on to compare our performance versus their current completely manual solution. What ended up happening is that we processed our allocated portion of the documents at twice the speed. And when we presented our results to the customer, we found out that they were able to actually remove 50% of the data keyers that they brought on for the project. This means we accomplished the task with 4x the throughput, and we did it with greater than human accuracy. We also take a lot of pride in our customer and user experience, which is evidenced not only by the quote that you see on the page, but also by the fact that we are able to install on-premise to full throughput capacity in less than 4 weeks, which is way ahead of schedule. And also with the kind of reporting and analytics that are built into our product as well, we enabled the owners of these operational projects and processes to get analytics on things like keyer accuracy and exceptions and things where documents are getting stuck for insights and productivity gains within the week of installation. All right, that's all I've got for my section. Thanks so much for everyone's time. As I mentioned earlier, Hyperscience exists to help large enterprises and government institutions on their journeys to automate their office work. We'd love to understand your current workflows to see if we can make an immediate impact with our products, so please don't be shy about reaching out. Teresa, now I will turn it over to you to field some questions.
Thanks. We've been listening to Anna Tolahi of Hyperscience, and before that we were listening to Richard Medina of DocuLabs. So thank you, too, for your time thus far. And we do have a lot of questions that have come in here. So I'm going to do my best to get to as many of these as we can. And I want to direct this first question over to you. Someone's asking about, how do you measure the accuracy? Do you have other people with their quality control work? Is it at a percentage level, or just how do you measure that?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and it kind of nods to the nuance that accuracy as a concept has here. People often want us to say, oh, we have a 90x% accuracy rate, but the truth is it really depends on the quality of the image, the quality of the handwriting coming in. And so our general rule of thumb is that our machines can do as well as or a little bit better than humans. So if you or I can read it, the machine probably can too. In terms of measuring it, the supervision platform that I mentioned earlier that does both exception handling and QA really helps out with this. So we basically siphon off a portion of the kind of transcription tasks generated in the exception handling platform to the QA team. And so from kind of their repeating of the task, we're able to kind of double check the machine's performance and ensure that we are maintaining these SLAs over time.
Someone's asking, do you do large format documents like blueprints, the 24 by 36, and I'm also thinking, CAD drawings, the large ones?
So we've gotten that request before. That's not a document we specifically support. If it's about kind of picking out specific pieces of information on things like the blueprints, we might be able to have a discussion about that, but I think it would really depend on what you're looking for out of it. If it's interpreting the drawing or stress testing it or anything like that, that is not a functionality we support today.
Okay. Someone else is asking the question that their customers don't have scanners or fax machines anymore, but so they're sending cell phone images of the forms resting on a kitchen table. How do you handle cases where the image is skewed, distorted, low resolution, all those little things that make it a less than perfectly captured image?
Sure. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but this is actually one of my favorite things to show in a customer demo. So if you're curious, please reach out. But if you have a cell phone picture of a document where half of the picture isn't even of the form, with our machine learning powered document classification, we're able to actually just automatically crop out all the irrelevant parts of the picture that are not related to the document. Like I said, straighten it out, flatten it out, kind of rotate it so that it's all straight again, and just continue transcribing the document accordingly. So I'd love to, that's a show, not tell kind of thing, so I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I'd jump in and say a requirement often is not just machine readable, but also human readable. So the picture, they have to be adjusted and so on to look nice for humans to see exactly what everyone saw, whether it's a customer service rep, a call center rep, or the customer, or whatever, what exactly they sent over the wire. So there's particular de-skewing and so on technology that dates back to the 1990s, but there are also applications that are specialized for phone use as well.
Okay. Anna, another question someone has in here is how much automation can you actually achieve?
Good question. So we have worked really hard to do a lot of data generation and training on our models in-house so that by the time we show up at the customer, you see out-of-the-box performance. And so typically we can expect to see about, let's say, 70 to 90% in terms of a rate of automation. But like I said earlier, it really depends on the nature of the documents and the complexity of the documents that you need to process.
I will jump in again and say that
Go ahead.
I will say that the case management and the NIGO processing, not in good order processing, for that's a different level. So that would be the stuff that Hyperscience does would be handed over as part of a process that does case management and maybe judges the completeness and correctness of a whole set of documents rather than an individual document.
Anna, someone's asking, with your customer base, how many different document types do you typically see your customers process? Can you describe that type?
Sure.
People come in.
Sure. Like I mentioned in the first case study I discussed about the global financial services company, the use case that I was talking about was within their wealth management division. And so if you imagine, a wealth management division of a company at that size, you're talking tens, if not hundreds, of different types of documents that kind of need to come in and then be routed according to, who's allowed to see them or touch them versus not. And so we are really agnostic in terms of how many documents you want to support because it's really just a one-time configuration, and then you can just run that variety of documents through the product.
A couple of people a lot of questions about the product itself, Anna. So, Rich, I'm sorry if you're feeling a little left out here, but I want to get to some of these questions here for Anna. And several people are asking about APIs, Anna, whether it's connecting to other systems or losing questions in here, using APIs to validate the data extraction from the forms. Can you talk a little bit about that API and integration that you offer?
Sure. I mentioned that we designed ourselves to be a drop-in solution for these processes. So on the front end, we're probably connecting through some kind of API to the document repository for batch uploads of the documents themselves. And then the output of the product is just structured JSON, which should pipe in directly to any kind of system of record that you use downstream. But we also do have APIs to facilitate the connection on all of those things.
Okay, so things like connecting with SAP or the Salesforce system for an organization, that's right in line there.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we want to deeply understand what the customer needs in terms of their architecture and their workflow, and then we just kind of tailor it accordingly.
Okay, it's a bit of a longer question here. Let me here. With an implementation after a period of time, and this, that there is that period of time that the software is still learning, typically, or what is the range that you're seeing? How long does it take for the machine to learn, to level out, and reach that new base level of exception handling?
It's an interesting question. I mentioned that the way the product was designed was that most of the performance should come out of the box. So that 70 to 90% performance, really gets you a lot of the way there. We're constantly kind of updating and upgrading the models on our end that our customers can choose to upgrade to at their own pace. But in terms of what the question is about, which sounds like on-premise training, that you can expect to get, maybe a couple percentage points improvement in terms of performance. But it hasn't actually necessarily been worth it to feed that back into the model quite yet. So the capability is there, but the out-of-the-box performance is really what you should expect to be driving the automation.
Okay.
And let me add, So we've had years of doing bake-offs where we do head-to-head of 2 or 3 products at a client site and so on. And one of the most disappointing things has been the amount of training, machine training, that has to be done, and the messing around and so on. So this was one of the things that was really surprising, the performance that you get with almost out of the box.
Okay.
Thanks, Rich.
The next question I want to direct to you is someone's asking about how do you handle the ongoing maintenance, and also 2 parts of the question, how do you handle form changes and updates?
Sure. So for ongoing product maintenance, like I mentioned earlier, our customers can choose to kind of push our model updates to production at their own paces. In terms of form changes and updates, for our forms processing products, we've really spent a lot of time designing kind of a template library editor that is extremely user-friendly. You don't need, a senior technical person to load in any kind of new document to be able to run those forms. And so, in a demo, I'm happy to kind of walk through that system and show how a business user can have that set up in a matter of minutes.
Someone's asking about, for minimizing the human intervention, how do you address when paper is crushed or the documents are really old or fragile or not crisp? How do you double check the accuracy on that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. When the paper is crushed or the documents are really old, the machine does its best to read what's on the page. The way we've designed our product allows our customers to toggle between optimizing for accuracy or optimizing for automation. So if you're optimizing for accuracy, you want transcriptions with a higher confidence rate before you let them through, or you can even toggle it to the point where you want, for instance, a human to review every single social security number that's going through because that's such a mission-critical piece of data. When you toggle it toward automation, you can have it so that a person does not check at all and just gets whatever data it can, gives the best effort, and runs it through automatically. But those are kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum that we allow in terms of customer settings.
Okay. One question, because we're getting close to the end of our webinar time, and we're going to need to wrap pretty soon, and there's still a lot of questions rolling in here. I do want to ask one of the questions of Rich, and someone's asking about capture solutions in the cloud. And I realize it's a little bit off topic from what we're talking about right now, but Rich, just want to allow you that opportunity to address that.
There are capture solutions in the cloud, but some of the main vendors we've been talking, the large vendors we've been talking about who do capture and so on, and their ability to do so is few and far between, so we've been digging into that. But there are smaller vendors that definitely do it. And Anna, do you want to talk about what you guys do in the cloud?
Sure. Given our customer base of mostly large financial institutions, insurance companies, government institutions, all of our deployments to date have actually been on-premise, probably for some of the reasons why the question mentions, right? The security aspects, the InfoSec questionnaires that you have to jump through in order to do a cloud-based product. And so we are very kind of happy and willing to deploy on-premise because of this. That being said, we're willing to obviously have conversations with customers who prefer a hosted solution.
Because we do need to, our webinar time is coming to a close here, and just want to mention a couple of other things before I bring our speakers back one more time. I just want to let everybody know that AIIM does offer live instructor-led training as well as online and self-paced classes. And so you can thoroughly immerse yourself in with a deep dive course or dip into a topic with our quick study offerings. And AIIM can even arrange for a trainer to come to your place of business to provide a custom perspective of our instructor-led training. And there is a wide variety of programs that we do offer. So all of that information can be found at aim.org/training. And so I just invite you to go to that site, and if you're interested, just to contact us, and someone will be able to answer your very specific questions on how we can help you learn more with more in-depth opportunities here. And as I mentioned, we are getting to the end of our webinar time. I just want to remind you that we have been recording this webinar, and it will be available in the next day or two at AIIM.org's Resources Webinars page. Don't forget to download the resources we've made available to you in the list that's to the right of the slide area. And also, when the webinar is over, greatly appreciate it if you take the survey that will open on your desktop. Greatly value your feedback and would like to hear from you. Also, very much want to thank our underwriter, Hyperscience. Without support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to bring you these free educational programs like our webinars. So thank you, Hyperscience, for your sponsorship. And as we do bring our webinar to a close, I just want to leave you with our speakers' closing thoughts or key takeaways from today's discussion. So I'm going to begin first with Anatola He from Hyperscience. Your closing thoughts today.
Sure. Thanks, Teresa. I'd say my closing thought is really driven by a lot of conversations we've had with our customers and our prospects, especially at the outset. A lot of the prospects we speak to have really lofty visions for their AI and automation strategy. But the key is really to, like Rich said earlier, not jump to the robot stage or expect dazzling insights and predictions off the bat. We really believe that building up transformation it's about going from fundamental core processes, like making sure the data entering your organization is coming in a clean and automated manner. And we believe that this is the key for both immediate and long-term success in any kind of AI or automation agenda.
Thanks, Anna. And Rich Medina of DocuLabs, your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, two quick things. First, I'd say we were very pleasantly surprised, that the subset of problems that Hyperscience can address was larger than we expected. There's greater applicability and so on. But very much when you go into this, you've got to fit the tool to the problem. So be clear about that. The second thing is trust but verify, and that is definitely do some proofs of concept and so on to make sure that that you've got the right problem for any particular tool like Hyperscience and so on. That's what we did, and we were very pleasantly surprised.
Thanks, Rich. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we will see you on our next webinar. And have a good afternoon.